Yes, I seen him in my TV. And yes, this is what he said. He said this very thing. He said, I'm upset. And I said, at me? And he said, no, my people don't know what time it is. And I said, no, they don't. He said, you have to tell them. And I said, you know, I'll do what you say. And then he said, good, I needed to hear you say that. It's not time to start yet. So that was in September of 2023. April of 2024, we felt led to launch this podcast.
Welcome to Carting Truth Podcast, a father-daughter duo focusing on sharing revelations through conversations with the Lord. Let's get started with today's episode. Welcome to Carting Truth Podcast. I'm Lindsay here with my dad, Shane. We are not in our normal podcasting area, as you can tell. We are traveling for Thanksgiving, and so we have a different setup, but we want you guys to know that we're so thankful for you, and we hope that you had an awesome Thanksgiving. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the end times pattern of how Moses dealt with Pharaoh. Now, we weren't going to do this one, but you got this download today. Sometimes the Lord waits the last minute, and I feel like he waits the last minute actually a lot to tell you, no, I want you to do this today. So
won't mess with it.
Right. So you won't overthink it and change your mind. So we are going to do this episode today, and we're so excited to get started with you today.
You know, when Moses was dealing with Pharaoh and all the other magicians was there, and how they had this confrontation, and how that confrontation came out, you know, showing that God was God.
Right.
That was a foreshadowing of the end time, how this end time is going to play out. And we want to tie that all together in this episode so people understand that this is basically reoccurring. You know, God's word doesn't lose its relevance because it reoccurs. Whatever has been shall be, and there's nothing new under the sun, it says in Ecclesiastes. So basically, that's what we're doing in this podcast. And we're going to show you how that this end time scenario is basically a bigger staged event than when Moses dealt with Pharaoh.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
And it also includes Elijah, you know, the two witnesses.
Right.
So some of those aspects are all hooked together. But that's what we want to do today, is to show how that's connected to that showdown between Moses and Pharaoh. The showdown will be even bigger, because what happened with that showdown between Moses and Pharaoh was basically Lucifer, Satan, and God were butting heads, right? Mm-hmm. And God come out victorious through it after it all, right?
Absolutely.
Well, this is just a bigger screenplay of that very same thing. So we want to show how that's going. And it's also in the book of Revelation. As you look at it, it starts showing up. It's the same thing. It's a reoccurring thing. And God will triumph once again.
Right.
And whatever has been shall be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's happened. It has been and it shall be again. So that's kind of what we want to get into.
Well, I'm interested now. Okay. So let's hop right into that.
Let's think about it. So God called Moses, right? Mm-hmm. Out of the water. Moses means to be pulled out of the water, and water is a sign of death in the Bible. You know,
that's right.
Whenever they were baptized in the sea.
That's right.
You know, which is baptism into death. That's what Paul said happened when they went through the Red Sea. All right, it was a baptism into death. So Moses is pulled out of death. He is the law. You know, we talked about that on the Two Witness broadcast last time.
Yes.
He is representation of the law. So the law come out of death.
Right.
It causes death. Right? Because what happened back in the Garden of Eden, whenever the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was presented, and the tree of life is grace. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the law, basically.
Oh.
Because what it does is it tests you to see if you're righteous yourself. So once you partake of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then you are now responsible for yourself. And that's why God said, don't eat of it, because in the day you do, you shall surely die. And the reason that is you're going to fail. Your righteousness is as filthy rags. And here is a deep revelation of what that means. A filthy rag was a woman's menstrual sackcloth, right?
Right, right.
What did that mean? That means that there was not a conception and that the birth didn't take place. And you throw that away because it doesn't bring forth the image. All right?
Okay.
So our righteousness cannot bring forth the image of God. Basically, is what that's saying. So that's the deep revelation of why God said that our righteousness is as a filthy rag. It's as a woman who didn't conceive, that didn't bring forth the image. All right. So because we can't do that, because we are not self-sufficient, because we're not God, same thing happened with Lucifer. He's not God. He can't produce righteousness of himself. That's what this whole thing's about. So we keep butting heads with that. So whenever Moses went down to stand before Pharaoh, this was to show that God is the only one that's true, that's righteous, that's all powerful. All right. And that's what happens in the end time. This same scenario plays out. Very same scenario. So how does this scenario plays out? Well, whenever, Moses was called out, right? And he basically for 40 years, he was trained as a prince of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Then 40 years, God trained him as a shepherd.
Right.
And then 40 years, he used the training as being the prince of Egypt and being a shepherd to shepherd his people Israel. Right?
Oh.
So he had 40, 40, and 40. He died at 120.
That's
So
right.
each one of those sections, that's what Moses was. And he's the law. He killed an Egyptian. That's why he had to leave Pharaoh in Egypt, because the law kills, right?
Right.
Then the other thing that happened with him is he couldn't bring them into the promised land because the law can't bring you into the promised land.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's testing you and it will find faults with you.
Right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So Moses was sent by God back down to Pharaoh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was he doing? He was going to harvest his people. He was going to bring them out of Egypt. He was going to bring them out of the world, separate them from their sin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And bring them out and sanctify them.
Right.
Well, that was the plan. Well, that's what happens in the first part of the 70th week of Daniel. The harvest comes.
Right.
That's why the two witnesses, that's the episode we had last week, while they're preaching the gospel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that's going to get saved from the first to the center part is going to get saved during that time. Then the strong delusion comes. So that's what these two witnesses are doing. They're preaching that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So just like, Moses and Aaron, in this, it's going to be Moses and Elijah sent. So you still have the two, right?
Right.
And what they're going to do, they're going to appear before the God of the whole earth, the prince of the power of the air.
Right.
That's who Satan thinks he is. He's God. He thinks he's God, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to appear before Pharaoh, that's who Pharaoh thought he was. He thought he was God, right?
Right.
And that's why his heart got hardened.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they had down there in the conflict between Pharaoh and his magicians and Moses and Aaron. Dropped down the snake, right?
Right.
God went first. Dropped down the snake. That's the first harvest. God's going first the 3.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Pharaoh's guys dropped their snakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then God's snake swallowed up theirs.
Yes.
All right. So the second part of the 70th week, which is the 42 months that Satan is in power, he gets to do his tricks. The false prophet brings fire down from heaven, shows all his miracles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the same thing that happened in Egypt, right? Moses got to go first and they got to go second, right?
Right.
Then what ultimately happened is God's snake swallowed up theirs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going right back to what happens when Jesus comes back. All right?
Right.
So the first harvest is the harvest of the wheat. That's the ones that are pulled in.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be saved. And then after that, Satan comes into power for 42 months, the harvest of the grapes. That's what the two sickles in Revelation is. The first one reaps the earth. The second one pulls in the vine of the earth, right?
Right.
So that's the second one. That's the conflict that's happening when he's standing there before Pharaoh, right?
Right. Okay.
And so Pharaoh, magicians do their thing, and then God swallows them up. So that's basically what's happening. First is the harvest of the wheat. Second is the harvest of the grapes. Then the resurrection takes place because the day of the Lord comes. So what happens in Egypt? They had the conflict, did all the plagues, just like the two witnesses will do, right?
Right.
Pharaoh let them go. Pharaoh come after them. Thought was going to destroy them, right? That's the second part of the week. That's the tribulation part of the week. Because what happens in the tribulation part of the week is that the saints of the Most High, according to Daniel, get destroyed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it says in the book of Revelation, that it's the time of the saints that they would be, martyred.
Uh-huh.
That's Pharaoh coming up on to the people who are trapped at the Red Sea to destroy them, right?
Right.
Then the Lord opens up
the Red Sea,
which is a sign of death, which is the resurrection, right?
Right.
And then Pharaoh gets destroyed, which is Armageddon.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
By death.
By death.
Yeah.
It's all playing out the same way, exactly the same way. So if you take those attributes and apply them to the end, this has all happened again. And that's why the two witnesses come and they do the very same plagues that happened in Egypt. They do the very same thing.
So bizarre.
So when you start seeing that, and that's what God was showing to me, he starts saying, this is happening again. I'm going to display on a bigger scale, on a worldwide scale, just because Egypt is a sign of the world, right?
Right.
Because it's his desire to demonstrate his power, right? Which is what happened in Egypt. He's going to demonstrate it on a worldwide thing. So people will be getting saved. The harvest will be coming in.
Right.
Then the grape harvest will come. There'll be death and destruction. And then Jesus will show up, just like Joshua did, to lead them into the promised land.
Right.
Jesus is the law of God. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's also the one that can bring you into promised land. Moses couldn't bring you into promised land, but Joshua could. So that whole scenario that happened from Egypt to the time that they came into the promised land is playing over again in this end time things. And God was like, that's happening again. I'm going to display my power in its fullness this time. Because when Jesus comes, he's going to come in the glory of the Father. This fullness will be showed up. That's why we talked about the day of the Lord, about the light being so bright, about them running from it, because this is going to be played all over again. So that's what happened. So let's go to a verse, and I'm going to show you a pattern that keeps happening over and over again.
Okay.
It's in Malachi. It's also in Hosea. It's also in Revelation 12. Because what God's doing, we have got a deception going on about the church not being part of Israel. And that is a deception that causes us not to understand the end times.
Right.
So what we want to do is we want to go over there and we'll read in Malachi, we'll read in Hosea, and we'll also read in Revelation 12. We'll see this pattern that God has that will go right along with what we're talking about with Moses, okay?
Okay.
So let's go over to Micah chapter 5, and we'll read that, all right?
Okay.
Okay, we're in Micah. We're in chapter 5, in verse number 2, and we're going to read, when Jesus came the first time, and then we're going to see this pattern, all right? Because when Jesus came, they didn't accept him, and that's what caused this pattern to happen, all right?
That's right.
It says, but thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth hath been from of old, from everlasting. Therefore, now right there shows the deity of Christ. The one that's coming out to be the ruler of Israel is from everlasting. So that shows you that he's God.
Right. Okay.
Right? Therefore, will he give them up? Now, what's he talking about? Will he give them up? Until the time that she which travail hath brought forth. Then the remnant of the brethren shall return to the children of Israel. Now, what was happening there is just telling that Jesus is coming, right?
Okay.
And then it's telling us that the Israelis, as a nation, would not accept him.
Right.
But Paul comes about and says, yeah, they didn't accept him, but remember, there's always a remnant that God received, that God reserved for himself, so that the root will always be there. So that we can't say, okay, they just pushed them away and they're no longer part of the church and the Gentiles took over. All right.
Right. Right.
Well, Paul says, yeah, that's what happened, but God always reserves himself a remnant. All right.
Okay.
So based on that, we know that in the book of Acts, like the first 5 times the church was spoken of, there was only Jewish believers, right?
Right.
Because the root had to be there.
Right.
Because we're grafted into them.
Mm-hmm.
We're not replacing them. We're grafted into them.
Right.
So we came into the fold, so to speak. And that's when Jesus said, I've got 2 folds, and I'll bring the other one with me. And that's the Gentiles. All right. But it's the same fold. It'll be one fold. Not replaced, but united.
Right, right.
So then he says, I'm going to give them up until the nation itself, right? Even though I'm keeping a remnant, even though we've got the tree still intact that we can be grafted into, the nation as a whole, I'm going to give them up. He's going to give them up for when? He's going to give them up till the center part of the 70th week.
Okay.
Which is the bug the guy was talking about.
That 80-year
right?
bug that we've talked about.
Which is also the time of the harvest of the Gentiles to be over with, right?
Right.
And then the harvest of the grapes to start, all right?
Right, right.
Well, he says that in here, and we see that in this pattern. And he says the remnant of them will come back, all right? So that remnant will become a bigger remnant whenever Israel's eyes are open, whenever they're born again. They were born physically in 1948 as a nation in a day.
Mm-hmm.
They will be born again in the middle part. That's when the Spirit of grace, according to Zechariah, will be poured out of them. They'll open their eyes. They'll realize who Jesus is.
Right.
And then later on it says that they will weep whenever Jesus comes back because they now realize
who he is.
Who he is.
He's always been. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's go over to Hosea and see where this pattern happens again. All right?
Okay.
It's going to be in Hosea, believe it or not, chapter 5.
Okay.
It's in Micah chapter 5. Now we're in Hosea,
Hosea chapter 5.
Okay, so we're in Hosea 5:15, and it says this, I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction, they will seek me early. Okay, I'm going to return to my place. Now, when Jesus was here, he said the kingdom of heaven was like a man going to receive a kingdom and to return, going to his country. That word place that we just read in Hosea can be translated country.
Right, okay.
So he says, I'm going to go there and I'm going to go to my place until they acknowledge their offense.
Right.
Early in their tribulation, will they
Yes.
acknowledge me?
Okay.
Micah says he's going to give them up until, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hosea is saying, I'm going back to my place until
Uh-huh. Right.
your eyes get open.
Right.
And then you're going to know who I am. And then you're going to seek me early. All right?
Okay.
Well, that pattern is what the basis of Daniel 9:24 through 27 is. He's saying, okay, 69 weeks, then the Messiah will be cut off, right?
Right.
Then we're going to have a week in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to receive me until the time of their tribulation, until the time that they flee from Jerusalem to go back out into the wilderness, which Hosea also says, I'm going to call them from the wilderness, which is, again, the pattern of Egypt, a pattern of Moses. What did Moses do? What did Joshua do? He led them into the promised land from the wilderness.
Right.
So they got to run back to the wilderness. So when Joshua comes, he can lead them back into the promised land from the wilderness, which will be the exact pattern. See how this pattern?
Right,
So this
yeah.
pattern is still going.
Right.
Well, then he goes over into Revelation chapter 12, and he says the same thing again. All right?
Okay.
So basically what's happening is I'm going to die. You're going to reject me. I'm going to go back to heaven, right?
Right.
And there's going to come a place where you're born and then born again. And then you're going to recognize who I am. And when I do that, you're going to flee into the wilderness. All right?
Why is that? Why are they fleeing?
Well, they have to flee into the wilderness so that when Yeshua, because remember, Jesus is Joshua taken from Hebrew into Greek, then into English. That's what Jesus is. But if you go from Hebrew straight into English, it's Joshua. All right. But if you go to Greek first, it turns it into Jesus when it comes into the. So that's why we're using the word Jesus, because it's going into Greek first, then it's coming into English. But if it goes straight from Hebrew into English, it's Yeshua. All right.
Right. Okay.
So who brought them into the promised land the first time? Yeshua.
Right.
Who's got to bring them in the next time? Why? Because the law can't do it.
Right. Yes.
So the law dies, and then it resurrects,
Mhm.
because when Christ comes back, he's going to judge according to the law those who are under the law, and those who are under grace according to grace. All right. So Yeshua has to be the one that brings you into the promised land.
Okay.
All right. So that pattern showed in Micah, right?
Right.
And then we just seen it in Hosea again.
Mhm.
Well, let's go over to Revelation 12 and we'll see it again.
Wow. Three different times.
3 different times. And it's all back to the pattern of this thing with Moses coming, bringing them out of Egypt, out of the world, and taking them into the promised land. The law can't get them in there, but Yeshua can.
Right. Okay.
And the law leads them to who? Yeshua.
Yes.
So
yeah.
what did
Because
Moses lead
the
them
law
to?
always leads you to Jesus because you can't do it. You
Right.
just give up and say, I can't do it on my own.
That's exactly right. And that's what these patterns are going from. There's the same pattern. So let's go over to Revelation 12 and we'll see this pattern again. Okay. So this mystery of Revelation 12, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman, the woman's Israel, clothed with the sun. So what did Jesus do? He died. He becomes the sun. What does he do? He clothes us. That's the problem we had in the garden, right?
Right.
So now we're clothed with his glory. And the moon under her feet, there's the law.
Okay.
Under your feet, the law's a sign, the moon's a sign of the law. And upon her head, a crown of 12 stars. When we get resurrected, we're like the angels. Angels are metaphors for stars, or stars are metaphors for angels, right?
Right.
And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. So that's what happens when she gets born again. She's been born physically, right?
Mhm.
Now she's being born spiritually, so she's travailing in birth right now. Why? Because of the tribulation that's coming, right?
Okay.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon. He's red because he's a murderer, brings forth blood, having 7 heads and 10 horns. We talked about what those 7 heads and 10 horns in another episode. Each head was a nation that tried to destroy the woman's seed, right? It was Egypt, then Assyria, then Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome, and then we said it was Germany with Hitler.
Right.
It will return again with the third head, which is Babylon again. All right, we've talked about that on other episodes. And those crowns are the kings of those nations that tried to do that, and that's what the Bible tracks. And he drew the third part of the stars of heaven. This is the angels that fell, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. This was at the cross, right?
Right.
So this was what happened with Herod.
Yes.
Right? Tried
Okay.
to destroy them. That was when Rome came into the thing, trying to kill the woman's seed, right? Actually got done, but he died and he rose again, right?
Right.
And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. That's the ascension.
Right.
That's going back to my country, right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
will give them up until the tribulation, right?
Right.
And then what happened? We jumped from that situation where he ascends into the heavens, the ascension, and then what does he say about the woman? And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath the place prepared of God, that they should feed her for 1,260 days. All right?
Okay.
So what is that? That's what happens immediately when Jesus tells them to flee, when the abomination of desolation comes up, right?
Right.
He tells them to flee into the wilderness, right?
Mhm.
Or she's going into the wilderness. Why? Because she has to come out of the wilderness to go into the promised land, just like the pattern of Moses and Joshua, right?
Right.
There it is again. And it says, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. This is the 42 months He's cast out of the heavenly realm into the earth, and he has power on the earth for 42 months. That is the grape harvest, right?
Right. Okay.
And the great dragon was cast out. That old serpent called the devil and Satan, who deceived the whole world, he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And then it goes on and says, I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of the brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God night and day. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They loved not their lives until the death, which is what happens in the great harvest, right?
Right.
We say the saints get wore out, according to Daniel 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Revelation 13 says that we die.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for us to live anymore because we've done preaching the gospel, so God lets us die.
Nobody else can get saved, so our
Right.
purpose is essentially up at that point.
Which is them being trapped at the Red Sea and Pharaoh's coming to get them, right?
Right.
And then they have to go into death, which is what the parting of the Red Sea was.
Right.
But they come out the other side,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is the sign of the resurrection. So that
Wow.
pattern of of Israel back in there is the pattern that this is taking place. It's the same
picture.
It paints that picture, and it's saying the same thing after the ascension. The next thing that God does dealing with Israel as a nation, when they become born again, it always jumps. It always jumps to that time that their eyes are open, which what was happening, they'd be chased into the wilderness. Why they have to go in the wilderness? Well, they got to come out of the wilderness to come to the promised land, and Yeshua will lead them into the promised land, and that's Jesus coming again.
Wow.
Those patterns of the Old Testament are playing over again in the New Testament,
Right.
in our future, and we believe that's coming. We believe that the two witnesses are going to show up sometime pretty soon before Hosea chapter 5 and 6, which we believe Jesus died in AD 32, and he's coming back 2 days. A day with the Lord's 1,000 years, 2,000 years. So that means this year, sometime before the end of this year, these two witnesses should show up. Now, God does these things the way he does this, but in order for this pattern to be complete, they would have to show up sometime between now and the end of this year,
right,
in order for the 2 days to be in 2032, which is 7 years,
right,
away from now. So
right.
that's where we're at.
And that's why I'm like, okay, why? I asked you earlier, like we had something else planned today. Why did the Lord say, no, you're doing this today? Obviously we're getting close, because he was like, no, you need to tell them this today on today's episode. Obviously with some urgency.
Well, we have been prophesying on this channel that we believe that Hosea, because of a vision I seen a full-blown vision of Jesus appearing in my TV.
In 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Telling me I had to tell people what time it was. My understanding of what time it was.
Right.
And he did not correct that. Is that he died in AD 32. He would return in 2032, don't know the day of the hour, sometime
right.
for 2032.
Right.
In fact, there won't be a day and hour, because when the sun goes out, we won't even be able to pinpoint what a day
is. Yeah.
You're not going to know what a day and hour is. But that time frame, in order for that to take place, then those two witnesses and this 70th week would have to kick off this year. And we prophesied that we felt like our leader was going to be the one that brought about the peace plan.
And he did.
And he did. That would implement this last covenant. And that covenant has to start with these two witnesses, because they have to prophesy 1,260 days, which is the first part of this week.
Right.
So we are, by faith, telling you that we believe that those two witnesses are going to show up sometime between now and the end of the year. Now, you can call back and say, well, you a false prophet, it didn't happen. Well, that's fine. That's fine. But I still feel like God's telling me to tell you guys, because I don't understand why he would appear to me and say, you have to tell my people what time it is if I don't know what time it is. Right?
So true. It's so true.
So he has not told me that I was wrong in my timing.
Right.
and he brought out this whole podcast. So that's what we're doing. We're not trying to be sensational. We are trying to warn people that we believe that he appeared. Now, he appeared in my TV. I have to play I'll lay my hand on the Bible and say, yes, I seen him in my TV. And yes, this is what he said. He said this very thing. He said, I'm upset. And I said, at me? And he said, no, my people don't know what time it is. And I said, no, they don't. He said, you have to tell them. And I said, I'll do what you say. And then he said, good, I needed to hear you say that. It's not time to start yet. So that was in September of 2023. April of 2024, we felt led to launch this podcast. All right.
Yes. And I was like, do you even know what a podcast is?
Don't even know what
it's not really something that you really talked about. I was like, do you know what a podcast is? He's like, I'm supposed to tell the people this is the platform. I'm supposed to do it. We need to do this. And we've just hit the ground running ever since. And there's been some big prophecies in between. You prophesied the election. You prophesied the heifer sacrifice. My husband had a dream about the prophecy of the peace agreement in October. There's been a lot of things.
So also prophesied that our leader would bring about that peace agreement.
Yes.
That he would be elected, that he would bring about that peace agreement. And he did. So
Yes.
far, our prophecies. Now, some people say, well, you didn't hit the red heifer. Right. Well, what I said and what I heard is that the sacrifice was going to take place. And then I felt in the spirit something about spring. Now, I do believe now, not that it would take place in spring, but that they would select the heifer in spring that they were going to. And they did.
Yes.
And then they sacrificed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came out that it was really the sacrifice. All right. Now, I'm not saying they won't do a duplicate one, but I believe the one they did was kosher, according to Numbers 19. All right?
Right.
So I was a little bit afraid that I misheard that or misunderstood it. And, we prophesy in part, we know in part, but the part that we tell must be true. All right?
Right.
And so I was telling it the best I knew how, that this was what I was understanding the Lord to mean.
Right.
So now I'm understanding, and he told me the other day, and I said this to him, he said, the 2 witnesses are coming soon. And I said, what's soon mean? That might be 10 years to you.
To you, yeah.
And he said, it's not going to be 10 years. And then he didn't tell me anything else
That's
about it.
So much like God. Like, it gives you little snippets and then expects you to latch on and to have faith.
Well, the reason I'm proceeding on with saying that I believe it's this year is he has not told me that my understanding was in error. And my understanding was that he died in AD 32, that he would come back 2,000 years, not knowing the day or the hour, not being able to pinpoint that, and that would be accomplished in that manner. And that was my understanding. And he did not correct my understanding. So I'm still going on the fact that I seen him in that vision, and he told me to tell you guys what time it is. And if I don't know what time it is, he should have corrected me, right? But he didn't.
How much proof did he give you? Let's go over all the 32 proof that he presented with you through this whole journey of you being like, oh, obviously I must understand the timing or you wouldn't tell me to tell. And you kept asking for proof. He kept providing proof.
Okay, here's what happened. I said, okay, you didn't tell me that I was wrong about understanding. If I have to tell the people what time it is, that means my understanding. I said, here's my understanding, Lord. I understand you died in AD 32. That is what the scripture leads you to believe, that Jesus. Now see, Herod did not die in 4 BC. He actually died in 1 BC. If you go back and look, he died during a solar eclipse, and there was one in 4 BC, and some German guy took that and said, oh, that's when he died. But technically, he really died in 1 BC because there was a solar eclipse in 1 BC also. So if you take that 1 BC and you realize there's no zero, and there's a conversion between BC and AD, and you look at the Bible where it says in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, so somewhere before September the 18th, the word of the Lord came to John. He started baptizing. He baptized all the way around the summer to the next spring. Jesus shows up. Said he was about 30 years old. He was about to turn 31 because he was actually born in the spring when the Passover lambs are selected.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you take John chapter 2, the first Passover that would be taken would be AD 30. And then John chapter 6 has another Passover. That would be AD 31. And then he dies on the third Passover, which is John chapter 11. That would be AD 32. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was understanding, and he died in AD 32. Now, the Essenes prophesied, and if you calculate that out, it turns back into that same AD 32. So there's my second witness. So I'm like, okay, God, my understanding is that Jesus died in AD 32. Is that the truth? Is that the truth? So I started praying that prayer. Well, I woke up one morning and he spoke to me and said, go look at your ball jersey. And I said, my ball jersey. So I get up, drive to my parents' house, pull out my annual, and there it is on me without me remembering, because it's been a long time.
Throw it up there.
32, AD 32. 32 was my number on my ball jersey. And I said, you put that on my ball jersey, knowing I was going to ask you this at this time in my life. I said, that's amazing.
Well, then there's something else ironic.
The other ironic is I thought about her. I thought, well, I asked her to help me. Let's go see what ball jersey she had. Guess what? 32 also. All right?
What?
So I was like, oh, that's just no coincidence. So
I didn't even know that we both had 32 until then.
And I
And
said,
I was
okay.
like in middle school.
I said, okay, Lord, that's pretty convincing that you would put that on me in high school, knowing I was going to ask you this question. I said, am I on the right track with this? I need a second witness. I went into a dream. I went into a vision. There was a hole open, and this voice, booming voice, said, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. You're on the right track 3 times. And then the hole in the heavens closed up, and then I came out of the vision. All right? And I thought, okay, I'm not going to tick him off by asking him anymore. He put 32 on me, right?
You did ask him again.
Well, I asked him, but I took care of it. But anyway, that's my understanding, and he has not changed my understanding. I am not trying to be a false prophet. I'm trying to tell you what actually happened. All right? You can believe I'm a false prophet. I'm really not concerned with whether or not somebody out there thinks I'm false. I'm concerned with delivering to you what God told me to deliver to you, because I have to stand before him, right? And I've got enough junk I'm going to have to answer for without me being prophesying falsely. So I'm not trying to, I fear the Lord greatly. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I am trying to be obedient. So I am looking, and I believe that this year, before this year's out, the 2 witnesses will show up. Now, if it ends up being next spring and I missed it by a year, you're just going to have to realize that I'm hearing this stuff and I'm trying to tell you the best I can. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I am. I really feel peaceful about saying this. I believe they're going to show up before the end of the year.
Well, and he told you to do this episode, which kind of reiterates what we're about to go through.
Right.
So why would he? I even said that. Why?
Yeah. My biggest one would be is why in the world would he appear to me and tell me to tell people what time it is if I don't know?
Mm-hmm. You forgot about the 32. Papa's 32.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I ask another question.
I told you, ask again.
So I sold my dad's personal property. There was a firearm that we could not locate. And we sold all of his firearms for this one. And I told my brother, I said, he had some kind of little silver firearm. And he said, yeah, he kept it under his mattress. And I was like, I never seen that weapon. I went through all of his stuff and didn't see it because he had gave me all his firearms. So after that, I was like, Lord, I've got, you showed me 32. You told me I was on the right track. I said, I'm really still struggling with this.
We're humans, and the enemy tries to mess with us.
And I'm trying to do it in the right way and not be deceptive about it. that's where I'm at.
Mm.
And so then I'm digging through some of his stuff that I thought was old ammunition for old guns he used to have. And I'm trying to get through them and get rid of this stuff. And in the bottom of that box, I pull open and there's that little handgun that I knew he had,
And it was a,
32. He was a 32.
and God goes, "Dun-dun-ch."
Yeah. I'm like, oh, no way. It was a 32. That's what it was.
You didn't ask anymore after that.
No,
After that, you're like,
I said,
okay,
that does it. That does it.
That's it.
So that's when you say, well, that's, superficial signs, but it's not to me because I'm asking these things and then these things show up.
We want to see you in heaven.
Just confess your sins, make Jesus the Lord of your life, abide in him and walk with him, and you will live with him forever.
If you are enjoying the content and would like to support our ministry, you can do so through Venmo or PayPal. Our handle is @CardingTruth, or use our QR code. We want to thank you so much, as always, for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate our subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed, we would love if you would like, subscribe, and click the bell for more notifications. Drop us a comment down below. We love to hear from you. We try to read those and respond to those. They are such a blessing. We love seeing repeat names up. We are just so thankful the Lord brought you here. I really think the Lord told my dad to do this episode and kind of reiterate what we did last week, because the time is up on us, and we just pray that you're ready. We want you to be ready. We are so thankful for you, and until next time from Carding Truth, we pray that you are blessed.